Hello. We want to thank you for taking some time to be with us today as we try to go through a demonstration of this phone system. And want to start by introducing ourselves. My name is David Jensen.
And my name is Matthew Jensen.
And we're also working with a fictitious individual named John Smith that's going to be helping on our cell phones calling in, simulating call-in as we go through some demonstration process here. Just a very quick history on us and why we're here today. We operated a home instead senior care business. My wife and I, and really our whole family, were part of it for about 5 years. And over that time, we used technology tremendously to help us do our jobs better, helped us grow, helped us provide better customer service. And we're now helping other offices use that same technology that we worked with back then. So that's why we're here. That's our background. And we're going to just give you basically teach you what we know. Want to point out one thing for clarification here. You're watching us full screen video at the moment here, but once we get into this, you're going to actually be looking at our phones down at the bottom of the screen. Right now you're seeing the back of our phones, but we're going to flip those around using the cameras that we're filming with right here, so that what you see underneath me is my phone, and same is true with Matthew on his. Our philosophy on going through this is that I've seen so many instances where technology is available, but yet people don't know how to use it. We're wanting to make sure that you're the expert and that everybody in the office is the expert on using these phones. Sometimes technology is so complicated that it doesn't get used. We're going to make sure you know exactly what to use, and so you have no reason to be nervous about that.
So let's get started by talking about the graphical interface of these phones. These are executive phones. So they're very nicely laid out and very simple to use and intuitive. So that's our main goal in all of this, is to make the functions of these phones as intuitive as possible. You can see here, you've got buttons that line the sides of the phone, soft buttons here, physical buttons here in the bottom section, and then obviously the handset here. Each of these names correspond to another phone in the office. And this more button adds more buttons that do other various functions, which we will cover in this video. For now, we can leave that hidden, and you've also got a nice logo there in the center of the page. Your extension shows up, your extension number shows up here in the top, and your two lines show up right here, and then your name will be somewhere along the sides, or if it spills over in this row here.
Take note that while we're talking about these phones, you're going to notice that at this point they're green, but when somebody is on the phone, you're going to notice that it shows up red, and it's going to show up red not just on the phone that's being used, but on everybody else's phone. You'll see it on both of them here, but that same thing applies to all the phones in your office. Now we're going to go ahead and demonstrate some of the very, very basics about using the phones. That probably constitutes 80-85% of what you do. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. We're going to talk about an incoming call, what it looks like, and so on. Also, how to answer a call and hang up a call. Okay, we're going to start by simulating an incoming call to show what that looks like on the phone. So I'm going to get that started here and let that start ringing. Okay, notice the phones as this call comes in. You're going to see that it's John Smith, and it's going to show up on both phones. Typically, all phones will ring in the office. That way anybody can answer it that wants to. Let's go ahead and answer that right now. And I am now talking to John Smith. David Jensen talking to John. Simple as that, okay? I chose to answer by picking up the handset. I could have just as easily hit the speakerphone button right here. In fact, I can toggle between those two as I'm in this conversation. If I want to, I can hit the speakerphone button like you see there and hang this up. And now, testing, I'm on the speakerphone, okay? If I want to go back to the headset, I simply pick it up and continue talking in our conversation, alrighty? So that's it as far as hanging up. In this case, if I'm on the handset, it's simply a matter of hanging it up. If I was on a speaker, let's go back to a speakerphone call. Okay, if I was finished with this call, the easiest way to terminate this call would be to just hit the X button here, the clear or cancel button.
Or the end call button, on the screen.
Right here, that's exactly right. So let's go ahead and just hit this one. Either one would be fine, and that call's done. Easy enough so far, right? Let me point out one feature that may be available for you that on your system. In most cases, we actually preload your caller ID contact information. So we've got your caregivers and your clients, your RPNs, and so on loaded in the system in the caller ID database. To make it simple to know exactly who's calling, even if you don't know who all the caregivers are and all the clients are, and that is a real possibility as your business grows and you have more and more people, depending on your size. But we prefix the caregivers with the letters CG for caregiver. Clients are CL. RPN would be RPN for your referral providers. We do that so that anybody in the office can know exactly who it is, even if they don't know all the staff or all the clients. That helps in many cases eliminate the need for an assistant to answer that call and then direct it. If everybody can see, oh, that's a caregiver, then scheduling or whoever is handling those calls can go ahead and be the first person to pick that up. And then if scheduling is tied up on the phone, somebody else can answer that, but they'll know who it is. The other nice thing about that is it allows you to answer the phone very personally, such as, thank you for calling Homestead Senior Care. This is David. How can I help you, John? That way it shows them that, anyway, it's a much more personal conversation. You don't have to have this back and forth identifying yourself and then letting them identify themselves when you already know who they are. And people appreciate that. Okay, now we're going ratchet it up just a notch now that we've gone through the very basics and take it to the area that often throws people. I've seen this many times, but we're going to make sure that we clarify how to do these following tasks, such as transferring a call and how to handle if you've got more than one call going on at one time, or conference calls. Those areas can be very confusing on many phones, but we're going to try to clarify those for you now. We've all made a phone call and the other party answers and they need to transfer us. And they'll say, let me go ahead and get your number down in case I lose you in the transfer process. Well, that's often because they're unsure about how to use the phones. We're going to make it so that you don't have to worry about that at all, that it's all very intuitive and very clear.
All right, so let's just start by making a call into the system, and I'll answer it on this phone, and then I will transfer it to David's phone.
There he is.
Pick up the handset. Homestead Senior Care, this is Matthew. How can I help you, John? And he...
Actually, I would like to speak to David if I could, Matthew.
Okay. Now, this is the incredible part about this system. To transfer, all you have to do is hit the name of the person you want to transfer the call to. In this case, David. So I press the name here. And a call is made to his extension.
Notice that I see that Matthew's calling me, okay? So I'm going to answer Matthew's call right now. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hey, David. I've got John Smith on the phone for you.
Hey, put him through. That'd be
all right.
Fantastic.
Now, all I have to do is hang up the phone, and they're connected.
David's talking to John. Simple as that. No codes, no memorizing extensions or anything like that. Just going from there.
Now, before he hangs up that call, let's give an example of where if you want to transfer, but the person you're transferring to can't answer it right then, and you need to stop the transfer from taking place.
Okay, so I'm going to, let's say I'm talking to John here and determine I need to send it back to Matthew, okay? So I'm going to hit Matthew here and try to go back to Matthew. Okay, you'll notice that Matthew's phone is ringing. He sees that David's calling him. Hey, Matthew, I've got John on the phone. He needed to speak to you after all. Do you have time to take this call?
Yeah, actually, I really don't. I'm just finishing up some stuff here on billing, so can you have him call back later?
Okay, yeah, certainly. I'll take care of that. All right. So notice here that I'm talking to Matthew right now. I can go ahead and end this call with Matthew.
Or I can hang up.
Yeah, go ahead. If he hangs up, okay. Either way, I could have ended it or Matthew could hang up and end it. But at this point, John Smith is on hold, right? I simply hit resume. And I'm talking back to John Smith. Hey, John, Matthew is just finishing up some stuff with billing. He said he'd get back with you in a few minutes. Is that okay? Sure, no problem. Okay, but that's how you bring the call back as you were in the process of transferring it, okay? Again, pretty straightforward.
Another transfer scenario might be when you want to send a call to an outside number. So let's give a demonstration of that. Let's say I'm in a call. You can answer that.
All right.
And David actually needs to talk to somebody who isn't in the office. but I happen to know the other person doesn't have follow me on, but I do know their cell number. So I can just hit transfer here or transfer here and enter their number, hit send, and I will place them on hold, and I will start dialing out to the cell phone that I want to transfer to.
So I'm on hold right now.
They receive a call. They answer it.
Hello?
Hey, I've got a call for you. Can you take that?
Absolutely, go ahead.
All right, here he is. You hang up, and they're connected to an outside line.
Here. Yep. So basically, transferring to an outside line is not much different than inside, except on an internal call, you have the option or the advantage of having the buttons already there that have people's names, and it's just a matter of clicking on those as opposed to dialing. We can also, if there's an individual that you call frequently on the outside that is often on their cell phone or whatever, we can also set a button up for that where you can call directly to them or transfer directly to them.
Pretty simple. Another alternative to transferring is what we call a park. So if a call comes in and you pick it up and you realize it's John Smith, you talk to them, and you realize that somebody else needs to take this call. You can't take it, but maybe you're not quite sure who. Or maybe the person you're transferring to is right beside you, so it doesn't make sense to call them ahead of time. All you have to do is place it in what we call the park. Park 1 is located right here. You simply hit that while in a call, and that phone is placed on hold, but it's a hold that anybody else can pick up. So you see here, I can hang up the phone, perfectly fine. They're still connected, but Park 1 is illuminated red in this phone and in that phone as well, if you want to show that there.
Yeah. Let me also mention here that when somebody is in park, it's the same as them being in hold in that I am hearing the on-hold music, which in the vast majority of cases is the home instead default recording that corporate office provides. Okay? So now, again, we've got John Smith here. If I want to go ahead and take that call, even though Matthew took it, I simply hit park, and it's easier to hit it before I pick up the handset. You'll see what I'm talking about here. I simply hit park. And if I didn't do anything, it would be on speakerphone. As you see, the speakerphone is lit up. Most people end up talking on the handset, so I can take the call, and now I'm talking to John Smith. Okay? Let's say that I talk to him and take care of one piece of business that's necessary, but there's still somebody else. Maybe he needs to go back to scheduling to do something with a shift. I can either transfer, as we showed earlier, or I can put him back in the parking lot. Okay? So if I hit park again, okay. He's back in park. All right? Simple as that. And that can happen repeatedly. Keep in mind that when a call is in park, it's obviously you don't want to leave them out there on perma-hold, but if something happens and there's a long delay and somebody else picking up that call, or if, heaven forbid, we forget that he's out there on park, the system will ring back, the person that put him on park, it'll ring back to that person in 3 minutes, and that's an adjustable number, but typically we use 3 minutes, and it'll ring back to them. They'll be reminded that that call was on park, and they can say, hey, John, I am so sorry. Matthew or whoever is still trying to finish up something, or maybe there's somebody in the office and they're trying to get them done. We haven't forgotten about you. Let me put you back on park or back on hold if you want to use that term, but you're putting it back on park so that John can take it. So simply put it back on park and it'll be available to somebody else.
Now, you might be wondering, well, if park is kind of like hold, then what is hold? Well, hold is what people traditionally think of it as. It's like park, except not everybody can pick up the call. So I can place it and hold right like this, and he's on hold. But you notice Park 1 is no longer illuminated on either of these phones, and nobody else can pick it up except for me by pressing this resume button here. Now, let's say I want to make a call to somebody else after I receive an incoming call to get some information, or maybe somebody else calls in. How do you handle 2 calls on the same phone? Well, we mentioned here we've got 2 line keys here. So if I want to make a new call to somebody else, I can just hit one of these and make a call. Or I could hit another name here and also make a call to an internal extension, like David. So that automatically puts the call on hold, and he answers the phone, and we're connected.
Mm-hmm.
and now I can switch between them. So whichever call here is expanded, these buttons relate to that call. So if I hit end call here, it will hang up my call to David Jensen, extension 301. However, if I select this call, then these buttons here relate to that call. So I can end that hold call, I can resume that call, I can transfer it, whatever. I can start a new call as well. And if I want to resume that one, I can just simply hit resume.
And we're talking again. So you can basically bounce between two different calls at any, in any combination that you want to.
Now, let's say I want to conference those two calls together. I can hit the conference button here, and voila, conference together.
All three of us.
And you can then use these buttons to end people out of calls, or pause them so you can't hear them, or this will put them on hold, or mute them from being able to talk in the conference. So pretty simple, and you can split them back out. And
now they're still, both calls are still there, but they're not in a conference at this point.
Both of them are on hold, and you can resume whichever one you would like.
Pretty slick, huh?
Pretty slick. Now let's talk about some of the other functions of our phone system. We'll start by talking about the buttons on the more screen here, and then finish with the buttons here on the physical phone. So if you'll notice this more button here, which we spoke about earlier, pressing this will expand more buttons and functions of the system. Now overflow names show up here, and overflow park buttons show up here, and other toggles, are what we call them, show up here. So let me see here. Let's start with night mode. Day-night, this button here is a toggle, and pressing it will put the system into night mode.
Night mode has been activated. Just remember to change where the phone is forwarded to if it will be different than last night.
Simple as that. You can see here that this button is now illuminated red on both of the phones if this phone hits the more button as well. So what does that button do, and what is night mode? Basically, night mode is how the system acts while you're not in the office, not during normal business hours, like the weekend or after 5 p.m. and before 8:30 a.m. or however your hours work. This will normally route a call to an after-hours cell phone or one of your on-call staff, depending on how you would like that to be set up. We can also set this up to be on automatic switch, so you don't have to press it before you leave every night, but having the, I don't know what the word is, the ability to always choose when it goes off or on, or keep it on day mode later than you would normally, is just a nice feature of being able to always control it yourself.
Yeah. In other words, we can override, even if it's automatically switching to night mode at certain times, you can override those times with the day-night mode. If you come in early and want to take it off night mode, or people leave early on the day before Thanksgiving, you could hit night mode, and it would put it in night mode earlier than the normal time.
And simple as hitting it again to take it off of night mode.
Day mode has been activated.
And day mode is activated.
Be sure to check for any voice messages that were left while the phone was in night mode.
Notice that we have a recording there. We do that because oftentimes, we know as the ones that set it up, we know what these buttons are for. But sometimes there's confusion as far as what does that do. So that's why we've always put recordings in there so there's no confusion about it. And if you accidentally push the wrong button, you'll hear that something's different. So always pay attention to those recordings to make sure that you've pushed the right button and you know exactly what's happening.
Next up here on the list is meeting mode. Again, it's just a toggle switch. You hit it, it turns red, and
Meeting mode
that
has been
option
activated.
is
Be
activated.
sure and share your thoughts with the team.
This button is specifically used in those situations where your whole office is in a room together, like a meeting, and you don't want to be interrupted by the phones as much. So if a call comes in while meeting mode is activated, they will hear a prompt asking them, "You reached us the one time of the week where we're in a meeting. If you're able, please leave a voice message by pressing 1. If you need to speak to someone immediately, please press 2. They press 2, they press 1, whatever they choose, and that's what will happen. And it's just as easy to take it off of meeting mode.
Meeting mode has been deactivated. Be sure and check for any voice messages that were left during your meeting.
Simple as that. That brings us to the third button here on the phone, phones down. So this system, like most systems nowadays, is what we call a voice over IP based phone system. So that means that the voice traffic actually travels over the internet, which also means you're dependent upon the internet. So if your internet goes down or loses a lot of quality, then your phone service will either go down or lose quality. We try very hard to make sure that never happens, but unfortunately sometimes it does. And so this button is what reroutes incoming calls to your cell phones in case these phones can't be used because you don't have internet. Now, unfortunately, if you lose internet, you probably won't be able to press that button to reroute those calls. And so that brings us...
You absolutely won't be able to press that if the internet is down.
That brings us to this down monitor button here. This is also a toggle, but it basically turns on or off our monitoring system, which is checking the internet at your office. And if it notices that more than 60% of your phones are unreachable or down or unavailable because the internet is down, then it will automatically turn the phones down mode on. And when the phones come back up, it'll also automatically turn them off. However, you can still toggle that here.
Yeah, there could be some scenarios where you would want to turn the down monitor off, for example, since that's always looking to see if phones are not connected. If you guys were moving things around in the office and had many of the phones unplugged, it might incorrectly think the internet was down. And so in the case of the phones going down, what that does is it tries to call the office phones, but in most cases they're not going to ring because the internet's down. In addition to calling the office phones, it's also going to start ringing the office mobile phones. In other words, we can program the staff's mobile phones into the system, and so it will basically, that's the difference between normal mode and phones down mode, and is that it's going to call you on your cell as well. Obviously, that's not as convenient as answering on these nice phones, but it's a whole lot better than having those calls go to some black hole or end up with voicemail. So that's the difference. Also, we should point out that if the system does recognize that the internet is down, that will send a text message and an email to whoever is designated to get that, usually the owner, so that there's another confirmation that there's a problem with the internet.
We will also be alerted ourselves in case we need to take action. Next on the list is the Follow Me button. We mentioned that the phones down will send calls to your cell phones. Well, this also sends calls to your cell phone. Let's say you're going to be out of the office and you want to receive incoming calls from another person, another extension in the office, or a transfer to your extension. Then pressing this will forward those calls to your cell phone after a designated period of time. And you can answer those anywhere in the world as long as you have cell phone service. And so you can toggle that on or off by pressing the Follow Me button.
It's probably important to point out here that because in most offices, when the calls come in, incoming calls come in, it rings all extensions, and that way the appropriate individual can answer it. That's not going to, if you have activated Follow Me mode, it's not going to be ringing you in that scenario, because that would drive you crazy because you'd be getting calls constantly every time a call came in the office. This is only if somebody is specifically dialing your extension. Like they could be transferring a call to you from an outside call, or they could just be dialing you directly. And that basically, it would not be in that case a whole lot different than if the person in the office, if they weren't transferring a call, it would be largely as if they were just calling you on the cell phone, calling your cell phone directly.
That brings us to the Page All button down here. That button acts as like an intercom for all of the phones. So you hit that and it'll create a call to every phone, auto answer, and then you can speak out to all the phones in the office.
What would be an example where that would be handy, Matthew?
Hey everybody, I've got donuts in the break room. That you might want to alert everybody to that fact and witness the mob of people rushing the kitchen.
Just make sure you get first dibs on the donuts before you send that blast out to everybody.
So the next up are these buttons here. You've got history. That's useful to see who you've called in the past. Directory, honestly, we don't handle the directory within the phones because they're easier to control in other places. Do not disturb. This puts your phone in a busy state. You can see it says I'm talking here, and also on that phone.
I can see it's also showing
calls
that he's
coming
not
to
available.
me will immediately go to voicemail.
Yeah, there's also an indication at the top of his phone, you'll notice.
And you don't want to forget this is on, or else you'll be wondering why nobody can reach you. And you'll see in a moment that the name will go back to green.
There it goes.
And you've also got the menu button here. These are mostly advanced things which you don't need to deal with. If we need you to do something advanced on your phone, we can call you and walk you through that, but you can basically ignore those buttons there. There are some basic things here like display brightness and other things that might be useful to you. Headset, we'll cover that in a different video, but it's toggled from this button here. Mute, if you're in a call and you don't want to be heard, you can press this button. If you want to put somebody on hold, you can press this button. Want to check your messages, you can press this button, and we'll go through that momentarily. Transfer acts as the transfer button on this page.
Which we talked about earlier.
This is useful if you're wanting to transfer to an external number. And you press this, you enter their number, and it'll go, you can send a call to somebody's cell phone in that same manner. And this is a speakerphone button. This is volume. If you change it while you're not in a call, it will change the ringer volume. And if you change this while you are in a call, it will change the call volume. This hangs up, you can dial from here, and this also acts as a send button after you finish dialing if you want to dial immediately.
Matt, why don't you, talking about the volumes, why don't you talk about the two different ringtones that we've got set up?
Oh, good point. So normally when a call comes in, an external call that rings all of the office extensions, you'll hear the traditional ringing sound, kind of something like that. However, if you receive a call meant specifically for you, it will sound like this. Kind of like a little jingle there. And that helps you know that the call that's coming in is meant specifically for you.
Extension.
And that helps you know maybe if all the phones normally ring, you don't normally answer the phones, you can ignore the calls that sound like this, but you can make sure to pick up the calls that have that jingle sound. Now, back to voicemail. If you press this button here, you will
You have no
be able to check your voice messages.
Press 2 to change folders. Press 3 for advanced options. Press 0 for mailbox options.
So
Press star for help, or press
if you
5
press,
to leave
if you
a
want
message.
to set up your
Press star
voicemail
to
box,
return to the main menu. Press 2 to change folders. Press 3 for advanced options. Press 0 for mailbox options.
press 0,
Press 1 to record your unavailable
and then
message.
you can choose
Press
the options
2 to
here.
record your busy message.
Um,
Press 3 to record your
1,
name.
2, or 3.
Press 4 to record your temporary greeting. Press 5 to change your password. Press star to return to the main menu.
So those are basically all pretty self-explanatory, but you'll want to probably record messages for each one of those,
Press 1
except
to
for your
record
temporary options.
unavailable after
So
the tone, say you're unavailable.
thank you for calling Matthew Jensen. I'm sorry I'm not available to take your call right now. Please leave a message after the tone. Press pound. You're greeted with more options to re-listen or re-record, but it's just like that. You hit message, 0, and then the options that you want to record.
What
Now-
about getting a voicemail? If there's a voicemail, how will you know you have a voicemail in this one?
All right, let's demonstrate that now. If you want to leave a message on somebody's extension, you can hit star and then dial their extension, and it will immediately go to their voicemail.
Please leave your message.
Hey, I just wanted to talk to you about our plans for lunch tomorrow. Give me a call when you get this message. I hang up.
Okay, now watch what's going to happen here.
And
look for this indicator up here.
In just a moment, this phone will display that a message has reached it. You can see the light blinks to the top, and something pops up saying
here.
you've got one new voicemail.
If I wanted to check this right now, I could simply hit connect. If I had already exited this, I could hit the message button down here. But let's go ahead and connect.
You have one new message. Press 1 for new messages. Press 2.
Oops.
Hey, I just wanted to talk to you about our plans for lunch tomorrow. Give me a call when you get this message. I hang up.
Press 3 for advanced options.
And to delete the
Press
messages,
5
you
to
press
repeat the
7
current message.
right here.
Press 7, message deleted.
And
no more
it's pretty simple.
messages. Press
I hang
3
up
for
at that
advanced-
point. Notice you'll see this light will go away in a moment because I have no more voice messages. There, okay, that's gone. And notice there was, I don't know if you saw it, but there was also an indicator up here that it was a voicemail indicator, and that's gone as well. Pretty simple.
Yep. And the last button here we didn't talk about is Redial, and that will just redial the last call that you made.
That's about it, folks. I know that took a little bit of time, but I hope it was well spent on your part. I think that it will give you a much higher level of comfort going forward on using the system. You will now know as much as everybody else in the office. Well, if you don't, certainly feel free to ask around. There's obviously some advanced features, I suppose, but it seems like we've covered just about everything here, at least things we can think about. If you have any further questions, check around with anybody in the office that might know. That's obviously the easiest thing, but we're also available by phone or by email. Our job is to make sure that you have the tools you need and that you know how to use them, and so don't hesitate to contact us if there's anything. Also, I should say, it's technology. Technology is not perfect. If you notice any problems or things that don't seem right, by all means let us know, okay? Don't just assume, well, they're too busy to talk to us or whatever. We are here for you. And if there's anything wrong, we need to know about it right away so that we can figure out what's happening. Alrighty? We thank you. Matt, anything else you can think of?
Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.